Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Resident Evil Extinction, starring Mila Jovovich, Ali Larter, and Mike Epps, directed by Russell McCaughey. My apologies there. Now, I do remember going to theaters for this, and what did I think of it? Well, it's going to be the same as the other movie. Well, let's get into it and we'll see. We open with a flashback from the first film where Alice, returned by Mila Jovovich, wakes up in the shower at her house and puts on a robe and a red dress and blah 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 blah. And I don't need this repeating itself 3 times as she makes it through the laser trap and goes in Raccoon City Hospital and gets shot at by a robot and Umbrella Corporation coming in and grabbing some blood and getting rid of the body in the middle of the desert when it's a clone of Alice, not the real person. And we see millions of clones that look a hell of a lot like her, and the Umbrella Corporation is surrounded by zombies. And when we get a monologue by Alice to catch up on the first 2 films, and the fact that they have millions of clones of Alice is ridiculous to the point it's so stupid. Alice is on a motorcycle helping civilians as she gets herself robbed and kills them off. As one of them, Eddie, is kicking his head, which was very stupid. But what makes matters worse is they let the zombie dogs out and Alice can kick the crap out of them. And Alice finds her way out and kills the robbers, and the scene was just pretentious. We meet a pack of survivors led by Claire Redfield, played by Ali Larter, as well as LJ, returned by Mike Epps, Carlos Olivera, returned by Odette Faher, as well as Kmart, played by Spencer Locke, Betty, played by Ashanti, Mikey, and Slater. And am I liking these characters and a couple of returning characters? Hell no. Because, come on, this is a video game movie with very unlikable characters to begin with. The pack of survivors call out if there are any survivors in an empty abandoned house as Carlos and LJ enter the house and find anyone alive, and if there's nobody in there, they then don't look. How fucking stupid is this movie? Because it's playing stupid in my opinion, while LJ is attacked by a zombie, and after a shocking incident, LJ hits on Betty while she's trying to make him survive, and I thought, oh god, this is dumb. Why, while Umbrella Corporation tries to cure the dead, which is super unrealistic until it attacks the scientists, and they're just as dumb as LJ in this movie. Jesus. Claire and the group of survivors are camped out in the middle of the desert at nighttime as a storm comes in and Alice looks at some map. And my problem is this plot is at this point makes no goddamn sense. And I'm starting to think if you're a Resident Evil fan, stick to the video game because these movies have no plot whatsoever while Alice is asleep, and all of a sudden a motorcycle comes crashing down, and as the next day, Alice has no choice but to walk in the middle of the desert while Kmart hears something as she comes out realizing it's a pack of zombie hawks as they're looking for food, and they suddenly fly away, and what the fuck was that all about while attacking the school bus? And as they find their way in, Claire and Carlos get people in their trucks transferred from the school bus, and Betty doesn't make it with a couple of others until Alice comes in to save the day while the birds are burning up, and Alice suffers from breathing a fire from burning the birds and joins the group of survivors, and this script making them meet together was convenient, as this script is as much of a mess as the first 2 movies. Claire and the other survivors have a funeral of the people who died, and Alice explains to Carlos she left the survivors because she was being tracked. And does that make any sense? No. Meanwhile, the Umbrella Corporation, led by a man called Isaacs, finds Alice while with the survivors in the desert, and that's how they track her down. And this movie is preposterous. Alice thinks the survivors should go to an isolated place with survivors in Alaska, and the group makes a decision to go to Alaska as the living dead are nowhere near, but first they have to go to a gasoline trip in Las Vegas, which is very laughable because it'll get more survivors killed, which felt like a real problem right off the bat and a questionable choice from the script. While on the way to Vegas, LJ looks at like he's paled as I'm thinking, he's been bitten at this point. And as they arrived in Vegas, they see the city is wiped out and filled with sand, and luckily they find a gas pump and see if it has zombies in it. And as they open it up, yeah, there's fucking zombies in them. And they get attacked and try to kill every single zombie they can. And that action scene was poorly choreographed. Doesn't have a brain in its head as Alice is shut down from doing her kick-ass stunts, and Mikey is killed, and a few others are dead as well as, and I just didn't care. And again, this movie is loud and violent for damn sure. Alice comes back to the kick-ass mode she was in and continues to kill some zombies as well as some Umbrella Corporation employees and doesn't shoot the helicopters, and I think she'll regret that as Kmart comes in and checks the computers while Isaacs becomes a tentacle bad guy. And why does he want that? Which is something I completely don't understand while Carlos is dying, because he's been bitten and has an idea to keep the others alive, which is to blend in with the zombie crowd. And the trucks go near the zombies and crash them motherfuckers in the ground while he crashes and has his last cigarette and gets killed by blowing up the zombies as well as himself, and the survivors get in the helicopter without Alice as she enters the Umbrella Corporation office further down as Alice finds a little girl from Umbrella Corporation telling her what Isaac's plan is for this movie and helps Alice get to Isaac's, but instead finds a clone of herself and goes back to where she wasn't set in the first film, but this time she fights Isaac's with his tentacle hand, and as Alice has a force field on her as Isaacs continues to fight with, and the lasers don't kill Alice, but Isaacs himself, and we get a bunch of clones of Alice ready to fight with the Umbrella Corporation, and the climax was silly, as this whole goddamn movie at the end of the day was very silly. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 2.3 out of 10. The dialogue was cringeworthy, as I didn't care whether the characters lived or died, as they were very careless. The plot is thin, with some stupid, questionable things being done by the actors in this movie, as this movie makes no goddamn sense. The cinematography was ugly, but despite the fact I didn't like the movie, I had a better time with it than the first two movies, as I wasn't checked out by far while watching this movie with its 90-minute run, whereas the other two were boring nonsense. But I'm going to bring it up 3 movies in a row. It's unfortunately loud and violent, as I can't see myself watching this movie ever again, because at the end of the day, it's a very silly movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Resident Evil Afterlife. And until then, game over.